We heard it said before that the greatest reason to retain the right to keep and bear arms is as a last resort to prevent tyranny in government. And here you have a Supreme Court decision, or excuse me, it's a Supreme Court of Georgia decision stating that we have the right to all kinds of firearms. Then a few years later, there was another court case comes along, and you see them start whittling away at your rights. Here in the opinion of the court, the right of the people to keep and bear arms is not a right granted by the Constitution. Neither is it in any manner dependent upon that instrument for its existence. That's in United States versus Cruikshank. So even here they're admitting that this right is not subject to any constitutional guarantee. It existed before the Constitution. But they went on to uphold any kind of weapon being outlawed if it could not be used in the militia. Then we come down to the following. This is just within the last year or so. Heller versus, or District of Columbia versus Heller. Like most rights, the Second Amendment right is not unlimited. You know, that kind of flies in the face of what Patrick Henry said. Patrick Henry said, the Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It's an instrument for the people to restrain the government. It seems like we've all got it backwards today. I've told you what they thought, and I've told you what the Second Amendment is. The Second Amendment is about ensuring the security of a free state. And the best way I can explain the difference to you is telling you that no government has the authority to disarm us, because the Declaration of Independence clearly states, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So you have an automatic right to life, you have an automatic right to liberty. Liberty is the ability to exercise freedom from restraint by the government. So this government cannot legitimately disarm the people. When I hear organizations like the NRA or anyone else telling me they're going to go to bat for my right by ensuring that we get a permit or a license, I know something's wrong. Permits and licenses are privileges, and the key to solving this entire debate is saying, I don't need a license. I've heard from a lot of people since I started researching this about they have to go through waiting periods or background checks or be okayed by some government authority to buy a gun. And now they're talking about a universal background check. A universal background check cannot be enforced without national gun registration. National gun registration always, just as recent as Hitler and the Third Reich showed. You have gun registration, you have confiscation. We want to go and outlaw a high-capacity magazine. Okay, if we get 10 rounds and somebody goes out here and shoots 10 people, is that acceptable? How about 5? At what point do the liberals get their satisfaction? They don't. What they want is the elimination of all firearms. They want a socialist government. I'm not willing to play games with them anymore. And I'm not willing to go along with groups like the NRA or anyone else. The right to keep and bear arms is absolute. And it doesn't matter what kind of gun it is. So how do we bridge this gap? How do we keep the guns out of the hands of the wrong people? I think they've been asking the wrong question. Every time we have this discussion, the only thing they see from the left is banning guns, having background checks. And then I have to ask you again, which is the real more serious problem? If we have 27 people a day dying because of DUI, how come that isn't on the news? How come we're willing to accept that? Did you realize that you're 5 times more likely to be killed by Obama's cigarette through secondhand smoke than you are by my firearm? That's the facts. We tolerate it in a free society. Your rights, your right to smoke, your right to drink. If you misuse it, then we punish you. So the question should be, since the government has no authority to disarm us, how do we resolve this issue to their satisfaction? Well, the first way is, even if they passed every single law that they're talking about, it would not have prevented the massacre in Newton, Connecticut. You cannot protect against people stealing firearms, but the one thing you can do, when 90% of the people who commit a mass shooting are on SSRIs, it should tell you these drugs are dangerous. Either quit prescribing them so much or put the people in protective custody. It's simple to me. You take the person who represents a threat to society out of society. It's a whole lot better than trying to police all of society and make sure that every single bullet that they purchase is accounted for. And besides, you don't want your gun being registered. It's just another way for them to confiscate it. The best way I see of accomplishing this is that we already have the technology in place. The only thing you have to do is, when you get a driver's license, they already do a background check. So there's no point in going through any more background checks. Just require the government to put a code on there. If somebody becomes legally ineligible to own a firearm, you put a code on their driver's license. That way a private individual or a dealer can look at it, and yes, I can sell you a gun, or no, I can't. If the person sells you a gun and you, without asking for your license, or you have a code on the front of it that says you can't buy a gun, that you're ineligible, there should be a felony for the person selling you a gun. That does away with the problem. But the one thing that we can't do is negotiate any longer with people who are willing to take our rights. Now, if you like what I've said so far, I got a lot more that I want to say about it. So you'll get in touch with me. You want to know what you can do? You listen to everything that's on this. You go back and research what I've told you. Research the court cases. Look at what the Founding Fathers said about it. And we have to make it the same way that we're racist in this country. You and I both know, if someone stood up and declared anything to do with white supremacy, although there's no laws against it, that person would be done short of being hung and quartered in public. It's only when the liberals feel that kind of pressure from us, that when they start talking about disarming America and we treat them as traitors, that this is ever going to go away. So I hope that you've learned something here, and I'd like to be back and talk more about it. Thank you.